It's only been a few months since Estonia's former Prime Minister Kaja Kallas assumed her new role as the EU's top diplomat, and she's already dealing with multiple major international issues. From a fragile ceasefire in Gaza to the liberation of Syria and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, Brussels has its hands full. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, the EU seeks to increase its cooperation with regional power Türkiye and find ways to work with the US as the mercurial Donald Trump returns to the White House. We sit down with the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy to discuss how she plans on navigating this dynamic geopolitical terrain. I'm Yusuf Erim, and you're watching One on One. The EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, thanks for joining me now. A lot happening, especially in Syria. I'm sure it's grabbed your attention. A change in leadership, decades of the Assad dynasty ousted. How are you viewing the developments in Syria? There's been some engagement with the EU on a representative level. Does that mean you're accepting the legitimacy of the Damascus administration?
Well, the Assad regime fall, it was a good news. So of course, we need to work with the new leadership. Now, I think it's important that we stick together with the regional actors, with the US, UK, Türkiye, in order to really give the messages and same messages to Syria, what we want to see. No radicalization, inclusiveness of government building, all this, no persecution of minorities. And I think when we stick together, Syria faces hopeful future. But of course, there's lots of work to do.
Definitely, Syria is going to need EU support going forward. Sanctions. A lot of EU sanctions, a lot of American sanctions as well, but let's talk about the European sanctions. They were mainly geared and focused on the Assad regime. Assad's gone. Logic would say that those sanctions should be lifted. You have a very important meeting on the 27th with foreign ministers from member states. Are you hopeful that these sanctions are going to be lifted, and how do you view that going forward?
Yes, we have a meeting on the 27th, already on Monday. So we have put forward a roadmap how to ease the sanctions. What we want to see is step-for-step approach, so that we do steps on our side to ease some of the sanctions, so that they can start with the building up of the country. But we also want to see the developments going to the right direction. So if they do the right steps, we are willing to do the next steps as well. And also to have a fallback position. If it goes to the wrong direction, we are willing to put the sanctions back.
What type of investment appetite is there in Europe for Syria regarding the recovery and rebuilding?
The stability of Syria is in the interest of Europe. So it is also the issue of migration. It's also issue of terrorism, all this. So of course, if there is now a government or country build-up, then it means that also the investors can trust the economy again. That means there are jobs created. That also means the people who have been refugees can go back because there is something to do and there is a hopeful future.
Now, east of the Euphrates, a group called the Syrian Democratic Forces has control of that region. Turkey views them as an extension of the PKK, designated terror group by the US, the EU, Turkey, and says it's a existential national security threat. It seems that Turkey could launch a cross-border military operation, but there also could be an agreement to dissolve the group. That obviously is going to depend on events and the situation on the ground. How do you view Turkey's concerns regarding the SDF?
We have been in the coalition together with Turkey to fight ISIS. So it is clear that terrorism is a big threat, and no country other than Turkey has been really affected by terrorist acts. I mean, in European Union, we haven't had such a big amount of terrorist acts as in Turkey. So these are legitimate concerns, but the stability of Syria is also in the interest of everybody, also in the interest of Turkey.
When we look at Turkey and its EU candidacy, but also Turkey unilaterally, whether it be helping the EU with the migrant deal, working together with the EU, on war in Ukraine, regarding grain corridor deal, also in Gaza, in Syria. It seems that there's a good amount of cooperation, but yet that's not translating into progress on Turkey's EU candidacy. How do you feel about Turkey as a candidate country? Should this process be jump-started, and what areas do you want to see more cooperation with the Turks?
Turkey is a candidate country, and we have many candidate countries. So what the European Union requires from the candidate countries to make certain steps. So when it comes to democracy, rule of law, human rights, I mean, all our candidate countries are making those steps. So that is true. Like you say, we have a lot of potential in our cooperation in different areas, whether it comes to energy, whether it comes to transport, whether it comes to economic relations. So I think there's a lot of potential, and we need to see steps on both sides.
Donald Trump, he's back in the White House. First time around, it was kind of a headache for the European Union and some of the member states, their heads of state. It looks like the EU has more experience this time dealing with him. How do you expect the US-EU relationship to move forward under Trump administration?
We are willing to work with the new administration, and I think the transatlantic bond is very, very strong. And it is in the interest of the United States as well as Europe. If you think about the economic ties we have, if you think about the values we share. So we definitely work together with the United States on different issues. Of course, every administration is different. Their style is different, and we need to adapt.
War in Ukraine. Now, Trump said he can bring peace in one day. Now, obviously, that was a campaign promise, but it does seem that he wants to create a diplomatic initiative. Now, the EU has been very, very supportive of Ukraine. The Americans had been very supportive of Ukraine, but what happens if Trump cuts that military aid? Where does that leave the EU? Will the EU go solo and continue to support Ukraine, or will they want to get on board with the diplomatic initiative?
First, I think the messages that President Trump has sent to Putin now to stop this war, I think are very correct ones, because in this picture, Putin does not want peace. That is a problem. Of course, Ukrainians want peace because their civilian infrastructure is being bombed every single day. But it takes two to tango, and Putin hasn't changed his goals. So I think that President Trump's messages now to Putin is, we're going to pressure you politically, economically, stop this war. I think this is very good. We have to do everything that Ukraine would be strong around that negotiation table. The stronger they are on the battlefield, the stronger they are behind the negotiation table.
If Trump went to meet with Putin, or at least his administration, for example, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he wanted European support, would you want to be at that table with the Russians talking about peace? Or right now, is there a diplomatic block where you don't want to speak with the Russians yet?
Whatever the solution, it is clear that it concerns Europe. So Europe has to be around that table. I don't see any kind of solution where you don't need the Europeans. I mean, you need the Europeans for the implementation of the deal. So the Europeans need to be part of it as well. Nothing about Europe without Europe. It concerns all of us. And of course, Ukrainians are the ones to say when they are ready to sit down, but also it needs Putin that doesn't want peace right now.
Another major issue, Gaza, a ceasefire now agreed upon. How do you view this ceasefire agreement? Is it positive? Can it be lasting? Can it turn into a lasting peace? And what are your thoughts on the current state of a two-state solution? Is it still viable? Has that now been taken off the shelf?
The ceasefire is welcomed by everybody, but of course it needs lots of work to be a sustainable peace, and every actor needs to really work on this, including European Union. We are supporting the two-state solution. That means that the two states need to be on more equal basis. It's clear that Israel is worried about its security, but Palestinians also need to exist in that area. So we need the two-state solution, and we are willing to work for that.
The Trump administration, at least in its first term, there was a lot of maximum pressure policy on Iran, possibility that could return. In the event that there's more escalation between Israel and Iran, what type of position would the EU take? Would it work to de-escalate that situation? And would it join any type of further sanctions against Iran placed by the United States?
When we look at what Iran is doing, supporting terrorism, also supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine, building a nuclear program, I think it is clear that we need a very strong stance towards Iran, and we need to work together with the United States how we proceed there.
I also want to talk about NATO a little. With Trump coming in, NATO is obviously a very valued transatlantic institution. In the past, Trump has had statements that concerned many of the NATO heads of state. How do you see the transatlantic alliance, its health under a Trump administration in the United States? Will it continue to be shaky? Does the EU need to create its own army?
No, we don't need a European army. We need 27 armies that are capable of cooperating and working together. In NATO, we have, of course, even more members, and NATO is a military organization. It's there to defend its members. So I think the messages that President Trump is sending, that the defense spending should be higher, are correct ones. I've been advocating for this as well, because the threats are existential for NATO, and therefore we need to, boost our defense expenditure, and we need to more work together. We need to invest in capabilities that are interoperable, that we can use to help each other to, avoid any kind of war.
Does Ukraine have a place in NATO?
The strongest security guarantee that there is NATO membership. That is clear, and we have been supporting, of course, Ukraine joining NATO. If you think about the declarations that NATO members have done, there's a clear path for Ukraine to become a NATO member.
Kaja Kallas, EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, thank you for spending time with us and answering my questions.
Thank you.